Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us the global expert on selling with a noble purpose, Lisa McLeod. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Well, it's fabulous to be with you.
So I love when you see company names or email addresses or, the monikers of, I am I recently interviewed the pitch whisperer, and, he helps people hone their pitches to get funding. And so I love when I hear global expert on selling. Okay, yeah, that's but noble purpose. So now we got some interesting thoughts to talk about here. So what is a noble purpose, and how can you integrate that into your sales? And, of course, kind of give us a little bit of your background and what led you to, working with consulting and coaching in sales.
Be happy to. So here's the thing that people get confused about when you talk about noble purpose. They often think it's about just doing good in the world, but that's actually only half of it. The other half of it is about competitive differentiation and what makes you unique, which is actually a commercial model. And so how I came to this was I had been a sales consultant for many years, and I had studied what makes the top salespeople more successful. And it's usually pretty easy to figure out what makes the bottom performers and what makes them different from the good, solid mid performers. But when it comes to figuring out the top performers, the numbers tell the story. But what's always challenging is to identify, what are the behaviors, what are the mindsets that make them different. And through studying a couple of different organization salespeople, what I came to realize was that there was actually an internal talk track that was very different on the top performers. And most salespeople go into a sales call trying to close the deal. And they know they need to add some value to the customer, but they usually do it in a kind of transactional way, the way their company is prescribed. But what we found in the top performers was they had a totally different mindset. They had what I came to call noble purpose, which was their North Star. Their primary intent was to improve the customer's condition, to add value to the customer. And it wasn't just sort of a game thing that they did where they used the sales call to try and figure out the hot spot, but that was their true intent in their heart. And so that was a breakthrough, and we tracked this across a number of companies, and the noble purpose sellers outperformed the quota-driven sellers. And then as I started to do some research on this, I saw that this was true at an organizational level. Organizations with a noble purpose actually outperform the market by over 350%. And so what I mean by a noble purpose is really specific. Organizations that have absolute clarity about the difference they make in the customers' lives, how they affect their customers, those are the noble purpose organizations. And one of the mistakes people make is a lot of times people will say, well, we want to be, a company that gives back. Well, that's all great, but if you don't have clarity about how your business, the things that you sell, add value to the customers, all the giving back in the world isn't going to make you special. It's nice, and it's going to help the world, but it's not going to make you more competitive.
When you were describing that, it made me think of a question. I think a lot of salespeople or business owners or entrepreneurs would like to think that they are, doing this and providing value and giving back and having a noble purpose. But maybe deep down in their pit of their stomach, when they don't get that sale or when the call or the relationship doesn't go, they're like, doggone it. So in other words, that's the trigger that maybe they're not really all into the purely giving for the sake of giving and making a difference. They're really kind of posing as, let me give value so that I, kind of like if this, then that. If I do this, then I should get that. So where are some of those things that you've discovered that people can kind of be doing some self-audit checking on themselves to make sure that, that is great that you have that noble purpose, but here's how to make sure that you're staying on track?
Staying on track. That's a good question. So, I'm an ex-VP of sales, so I'm well acquainted with the sting of the loss. And so we all feel it when you don't get the business. And people are complex. You're upset because you didn't get the revenue. You can also be upset because you saw a real opportunity to help the customer. I don't think you need to delineate between the two, but some behaviors that will really keep you on track. You've got to have clarity about how you make a difference. And so I'll just use our company as an example. So our company's purpose is to help leaders drive revenue and do work that makes them proud. The two things that we want to help people with are how they can make more money and how they can be more emotionally engaged in their own work, do something that makes them really proud. That's our business. And so when I go in to meet with an executive, what I need to find out from that executive, it starts right from the get-go. If my objective is to help them make money and help their people get emotionally engaged, then that frames everything. Then I need to ask them, what's your revenue situation now? Where do you want it to be? What are your margins? Where do you want them to go? What does that look like? Who's your competition? What's your positioning against them? How much do your people care now? What would it look like if they cared more? So can you see how that whole line of questioning is about where they are with this thing that I want to help them with and what success would look like for them? And
because I think that so many people, even there, I think that a lot of people think, well, I asked the right questions, and we are, and I think that people, salespeople, if you were to ask them the questions, all the typical sales training, coaching type things, how do you feel about, and do you always, and ask for referrals, I think that most people would say, yeah, I do that, but they really don't. So it's your job kind of to help peel the layers of the onion back and go, yeah, but you really don't have that clear vision of, or that clear why, and I think that once you get that, then there's your compass set to the North Star, and now you've got, that really, really good, clarity built there.
Right, because most people, I spent years as a sales trainer, and I am in my heart a salesperson. I don't have any disdain for salespeople. I think it's a noble profession. That's why I do the work that I do, and I think that, the world would be a very bad place if nobody bought anything.
Yep.
Schools would be sitting there without textbooks or blackboards or, benefit plans. So, to me, selling is a noble profession. The challenge is that as a salesperson, your default is to ask questions. And whether you're selling yourself or whatever it is, the default, if you're selling your company or a product, the default is around your solution. So even if you're asking questions, if I were selling benefit plans to a school, then it would be really easy for me to ask questions about what kinds of benefit plans do you have now? How are they working? What do you pay? Those are still pretty me-oriented questions. But if I work for a benefit plan company whose purpose, whose North Star, whose noble purpose is to help educators have a secure future, then I'm going to ask a whole different set of questions. Then when I sit down with the person who's the head of that school system, I'm going to ask questions like, tell me about who your people are and what kind of future you want for them. What kind of future do they see themselves having now? What would a better future look like? And so it's a nuanced difference, but it takes the conversation in a wholly different way. And what you'll find is if you employ this and embrace it, not only will you increase your win rate, but one of the things that we've seen with our clients is you and your people will start to get to much more senior level executives because you're having a much more interesting conversation.
And it's interesting because it's different. You talk about competitive advantage. It's different because 99.9992% of all the salespeople out there, I'll bet, don't even do a smidgen of what you're describing. So when you can execute that, even, attempts at executing it okay and then doing better next time, but that becomes very noticeable to the person you're having that conversation with.
Absolutely. It's completely different because it's the difference between understanding your solution and questioning to see if your solution is a fit versus understanding the potential impact you have and questioning to see where the customer is in that subject matter area right now. And that's a completely different set of issues.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's kind of go a little bit deeper on what happens if a salesperson doesn't focus on the purpose. What are some of the kind of fallout with that?
Well, the typical symptoms and the reasons that clients call us is I usually hear a couple things. One, all our customers are price shopping. My salespeople are very transactional. The business always comes up for renewal every year, and it's a big battle on price. The clients don't see us as differentiated. They're comparing us like apples to apples, but it's really apples to oranges. And so what you'll see in a situation where you are not focused on customer impact is you will start to see you won't have a good win rate, your margins will go down, you'll be very non-differentiated. And so when people call us, what they often want is they want us to teach skills to their salespeople. But that's actually part two. Part one is naming and claiming their own noble purpose, which is a clear articulation of how they want to make a difference to their clients. Like one of our clients is in the travel business, and their statement was, we care about delivering amazing travel experiences. Mm-hmm. Well, it would be easy for that to be a slogan, but what we had to do in that company was we had to then go through and codify what does caring look like at every stage of the customer experience? How do we deliver at every stage? How does the customer define amazing? And so it wasn't just, hey, we're all going to care about delivering amazing travel experiences.
Yeah.
It was how
and it was a nice soundbite for a year-end meet planning session. But
right, we'll all get all hopped up.
Yeah, Yahoo, have a nice New Year. But what is deliverable? Yeah, that's a really good point, because what does that look like? How do we know we got there?
That's right. And so we had to really be clear and put some metrics in place around that. Then once we have the leadership on board that this is who we are and what we're about, the impact we want to have, we've got a way to talk about it, because we also have to have examples of when we're doing it. Your purpose isn't just something that you pull out of the sky. It's something that's already in your business. You're just taking it and making it more concrete. You're taking what may be implicit and making it extremely explicit. Then you can train your salespeople, but you've got to have that clarity first.
Yeah, that's a super point. And it's kind of like ready, fire, aim. You know, you have to know where you're going before you start firing. You have to know, are you going to get in a car and say, I'm going on vacation? Where are you going? I'm just going to drive. You got to have that. Most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their business and their life. But, if you just have that plan, then you feel like, how does most people feel? I think this is a common thought. If you give me a checklist of things I need to do today and tell me to do it, I can do that, because I can do number one and check it off, and number two and check it off, and go, okay, good, I did that. Well, the magic is in getting the list done in the first place. Right.
Well, and the thing is that a lot of organizations are very frustrated with their sales team or their marketing team, and I'll talk to the senior leaders, and they'll say, well, my people are so transactional, they need different skills. And so when you talk about the checklist, what we've developed is a methodology around it. And what we've proven is that your message to the market and your buyer's response will not change until we've got a list of about 10 internal things that you have to work on. And they're not hard. I mean, they take work. But until you get those things shifted, what I always say is the internal conversation will become the external conversation. And if your internal conversation is only about numbers, revenues, profits, productivity numbers, then your people do not have a compelling story to take to your customers.
Yeah, I recently interviewed someone for this show who started a company because he went to Nepal for vacation with his wife, and they were there 2 weeks, and then they got this opportunity to do some project, some coding project, and then they met this guy there in Nepal, and he said, I go across, to the United States to work for, years at a time, and I come back every 3, 4, 5 months and visit my family. And he's like, wow, but because there's no jobs in Nepal that this guy was good at. He was in coding. So this guy goes, hey, I'm going to give you, do this project. And they worked on this project, and then another one comes up, and he's like, I'm going to keep hiring. And the long story short is they now have this cloud-based outsource for high-tech coding kind of, even a virtual assistant. But what he does is he goes to places like Nepal and Kenya and hires workforces there that are qualified. And he even mentioned that many of these places, these people are making $2 a day. So the impact that they have of making a normal wage from someone in a company like what we would have is dramatic. And he says that on his website he spotlights the people's bios and stories. And so he now is capitalistic because he owns a company, but he's making an impact because he's really giving back to those communities. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If you just go in and go, got to make my numbers, well, yeah, you punched your time clock and time sheet and you did your job, and okay, wonderful. But wow, what if we could make that impact? And what if we can do it for the right way? And then that kind of draws people to us because it's more than just the deal.
Well, it is. And the thing that we've seen now is there's such transparency in companies right now. So one of our clients is Hootsuite. They're in the social media space. They're a company that helps. Hootsuite's purpose is to help their clients turn their messages into meaningful relationships. Because what a lot of people do on social media is just blast. And Hootsuite, through software and consulting, helps them create meaningful relationships with their customers. And one of the things that we know, and it came from some of Hootsuite's data, is now, even in a B2B sale, 70% of the buyer's journey is online. And that's really, really important because what that says is if you're not differentiated, if you're not telling a compelling story, and you don't have a clear articulation of who you are and the value you add, you're never even going to get in front of anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so tell us a little bit about your book or books, and what does the kind of the key points in them?
So the two of my books that are the most popular, now I've written 5. The two that are the most popular are Selling with Noble Purpose and Leading with Noble Purpose. And Selling with Noble Purpose was written to really show people at a very strategic and also tactical level, what does this look like when you do it? And so it's written for people that run sales organizations. And so it covers everything from, like, what is your purpose? How do you find it? How do you name it? To how do you activate it in sales calls? What do your call openings need to look like? What does your sales coaching need to look like? How do you activate it in presentations? And so I wrote that book a couple of years ago, and it was really successful. And what I found was organizations that embraced it saw sales growth. What I also saw was the organizations that embraced it beyond the sales department, where the senior leadership team, where product development embraced the idea of noble purpose and customer impact. When it went broadly in an organization, we didn't just see revenue growth. We saw like hockey stick, like revenue growth. And so what I did in Leading with Noble Purpose was that book is about how do you activate this across an entire organization. And so by the time I wrote that book, we had a lot of case studies. So some of our clients, and they've given permission because they're in the book, so it's okay to share this, some of our clients like Hootsuite, they doubled their revenue in a 2-year period using this methodology. I mean, we had other clients that were giant global clients, so they had a huge base of revenue, and they still saw major market share and profitability gains. You know, Flight Center is one of our clients, and they've got 18,000 people around the world. And we saw huge acceleration in customer engagement, employee engagement, and it translated into revenue. And so that second book, Leading with Noble Purpose, is really about how you do this on an organizational level.
Love it. I mean, you've got that dialed in. You know, you're not training on how to cold call and how to make it. You've got noble purpose and leadership, and let's get it done. And so I love that specificity. So how can people learn more about your books, Noble Purpose, and learn more about your organization?
Just Google Lisa McLeod, Noble Purpose. You know what? I think if you just Google Lisa Noble Purpose, I think I'll come up.
Nice.
You know, it's interesting. What's really evolved over the last couple of years is purpose has become a more popular topic. And what I find people talking about it. They tend to talk about it in 2 ways. One, from a brand essence standpoint and the message to the market, or 2, in a social responsibility give back way. And what's evolved is that I've become the expert in how do you actually implement this in a commercial model, because the brand essence matters, the give back social responsibility matters, but until you get this embedded in your operation and in your sales culture, in your product development, you won't get the competitive differentiation or employee engagement that you could, that you do with those two sidebar things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I learned a whole lot. I love hearing about your approach, and I just really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with us.
It was great to talk with you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.